So we're going to talk about stations, what stations are, how they're used, and the difference between order level stations and line item level stations. Okay, to begin with, a station is a way to track jobs as it moves through production. Okay, so think of the production cycle. You typically begin with an estimate and it gets converted to an order. Sometimes in the estimate phase or the early order phase, it'll go through design and then printing and finishing and then shipping eventually. So think of that as your production cycle. And stations are meant to tell you where at the job is in that production cycle. Now, you can track jobs on an order level basis or on a line item level basis. Some customers even do a combination of both of those. One reason why you would want to use line item level stations instead of order level stations is if you do a lot of jobs, maybe you're doing channel letters for a company, maybe this company just started, okay, and you're doing a vehicle wrap, you're doing channel letters, and you're doing some grand opening banners. And you have all of that on one order. All three of those, whenever they go into production, they're going to eventually be in 3 separate spots in the shop. Okay, so if you want to be able to track where each of those items are, track or using line item level stations, that would probably be the best way to go. Now, if that's kind of the minority, that's you do those kind of jobs, maybe 1 out of every 30 jobs, it might be easier for you to just use order level stations. Order level stations, they are a little bit easier just because you're only tracking, if an order has 10 line items, instead of moving all 10 line items through production, you're just moving the order through production. So order level stations tend to be easier, but normally they're just used by smaller shops. Line item level stations really let you nail down exactly where an order is, but they tend to be more cumbersome to push jobs through the shop. Next, we're going to go over how to create a station. So if we go to the very top and we click on Setup, then we go down to System Setup. Okay, over on the left, underneath Production, there's a section for stations. Okay, oops, sorry, let me open that again. So these are our stations, and sometimes you'll hear us call these departments, because typically what someone will do is they'll determine what the different departments are in their shop, and they'll make a main station for each department. So in this particular case, let's start with design. I always find that to be the easiest one. So we have a station here called design. I'm going to click the little plus sign next to it, and notice how we have multiple stations underneath it. Okay? Whenever I click on design and I click edit over to the right, notice how on a station you can specify if the station is used for orders, if it's used for estimates, line items, and if you can clock into it. Okay? Now, underneath orders, you can specify if this station is used in the WIP, built, or sales status. Now, it could be multiple, but typically an order is only going to be in the design station whenever it's first started. You're never going to invoice, the order's never going to be in sale, and the job's going to go back to design. Or typically that's not the way it's going to happen. So that's why we only have the WIP station checked here. You can filter which stations show depending on what status the order is in. Okay? And a station can be both an order and an estimate station, or it can be both an order and a line item station. So if we wanted to, let's say we wanted to create a new station called, actually we have one here, on hold, and it says awaiting for approval, waiting for artwork. I'm trying to think of another department we can add in here. I think I have, no, I don't have finishing. Okay, let's say we want to create a department for finishing, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on New Department at the top, and I'll name it Finishing. Okay? An order is only going to go into finishing whenever it's in the WIP status. And yes, I can use this for line items. Okay? So over to the right, I'm going to save this. Okay? Now one thing to notice is that there's this reconfigure mode. If I click on that, what Control allows me to do is it allows me to put my stations in some kind of an order. Okay? So to begin with, I am going to put my estimate station at the very top because typically the order starts out as an estimate. So at the very top, I click on estimate, I click move up, and all that it's doing is it's going to move the estimate up to the very top line. And this is just for organizational sake. It's not, it's okay if you have these things out of order a little bit because sometimes things will be in multiple stations at the same time. So I have estimate, and then I'm going to put maybe design, and then production. Okay, so as I create my stations, I can go in and move them up and down, or I can demote them. I'm going to, since I'm finished with my changing the level of everything, I'm going to save the configuration over here. So I'll click on save. So now, next time I come to this particular screen, this is the order in which I'll see my stations. Okay, and if you ever need to change those again, you can. There is a way that you can combine stations you can combine two stations into one. Let's say we want to combine the pre-press and the design, since those are somewhat related, or some shops kind of consider those to be, since it's typically the same people that do both of them. Okay, what I could do, let me save this. So I can edit my pre-press. Sorry. Maybe I can do design. Nope, it's just this one. Sorry. So right here, where we have, let's say, where we have our waiting for approval. If we wanted to move this up to a higher station, we can edit this and move it up to just design. And notice how it goes from being underneath on hold to underneath design. So you can move different levels if you want to. So what I would recommend doing is just jotting down a list of all of the different departments that you have. And typically the way stations work is whenever a job is first put into production, it'll typically go to the pre-press department. And normally, I'll create a new station. Normally there's an in queue and an in progress station for each, oops, sorry, cancel this. I clicked the wrong button. Pre-press, new sub-level station. There we go. So in queue. Normally there's an in queue and an in progress for all of the different departments. Okay? So what this means, in queue means these are the jobs that I need to work on. Okay? And then the other station that you typically have is the in progress station. Okay? And that's what that person is currently working on. So for each section, you'll have both an in queue and an in progress. So let's say I am beginning to work on this job right here, 1123. I work in pre-press, and I'm about to work on 1123. I'm going to right-click on my line item, and I'm going to change my station. I might just have to close and reopen. Let me do that. Let me just close this and reopen it. I'm not seeing my new station, but I may need just to refresh the system. Okay, so 1123, right-click, change station, and there's my pre-press. So pre-press in queue. I would change it if I'm currently working on it. I would change it to pre-press in progress. So that lets everyone know that I'm currently working on this particular order. Okay, now whenever I'm done with it, after pre-press, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the job to the next department. So I'm going to push this job from pre-press to production in progress, or production printing in queue. Okay, now what that's doing is that's telling the production people that that job is ready to print. So whenever they start working on it, if I were the printer, I would change this station to production printing in progress. Okay? So I work on it, I'm done with it, it needs to go to, let's say, finishing, or maybe it needs to go straight to the shipping department. I would change my station to maybe Nope, I need to change it to finishing, I guess. Finishing, here we go, or packaging, there we go. Packaging in queue. So that's telling the person in the shipping department that that job is now ready to package. So does that make sense? So what you're doing is whenever you're done with the job, you're pushing it to the next station or to the next department, and you're putting it in their in-queue station. Whenever they start working on it, they'll move it from in-queue to in progress. Okay? Now, what stations allow you to do, they allow you to, last time we went over this, we created dashboards, and we spoke about filtering on stations. So what this lets you do is it lets you filter on a particular station. So if I work in the packaging department, what I can do is I can filter all orders by, what was it, production packaging? I can filter all orders by this particular station, and I know what items are in queue and which items I'm currently working on. So as something's ready for me, it automatically pops into my dashboard, and whenever I'm done with something, I can right-click on it and push it to the next station. Okay, so using stations on Explorer windows and on dashboards, that's whenever it really becomes handy, because your production manager, he can easily look at this job right here and tell, okay, there's 78 jobs in pre-press. That sounds like a lot. And this one right here, it's just, this dashboard is set to refresh every probably 30 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll manually refresh it. Okay, so I have 31 orders in pre-press. And these are my jobs. These are the WIP orders that are in any of the production stations. So any station that begins with the word production, it's going to show up here. So a combination of stations and dashboards allow anyone to quickly see where jobs are in production. It allows your production manager to see where all the jobs are, maybe where there's a bottleneck. Right now, I have 31 jobs in pre-press, but only 10 being printed or in the finishing department. So maybe I need to hire more guys in pre-press so that they can get the jobs done faster for the people in production.